Hey everyone, David Aragona here with Craig Milkowski, taking a look at one of these stakes on the Tampa Bay Derby undercard, Tampa Bay Downs on Saturday. It is the race right before the Tampa Bay Derby, race 10, the Grade 3 Florida Oaks going the mile and the 16th distance for three-year-old fillies. A full oversubscribed field signed on for this one, Craig. 12 runners within the main body of the field, two long shots stuck on the also eligible list. And for a large field, we do have a clearly defined favorite here in the number 10 free look. No surprise going out for the Chad Brown barn with Irad Ortiz in the irons.
Yeah, this is quite the field, a nice handicapping puzzle. It's not the kind of race I'm generally going to be drawn to a favorite like Free Look. Not that I don't think she's a contender, but we'll obviously get into that as we move on through the video.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways to go in this race. And even though there is that distinct favorite on the morning line, there are many runners to consider with upside in this race. And we're going to talk about as many of them as we have time for. Before we get to those main contenders, though, let's take a look at that Timeform US pace projector to see how these horses might sort themselves out towards the front end. And Craig, I agree with this. I think that the number 5, Dreaming of Snow, if she handles the turf at all in her grass debut, is going to be on the front end and probably going pretty quickly to get there.
Right. And I mean, you never really know if a horse is going to handle grass, but usually if they don't, that shows up later in the race. I suspect with her early speed, even if she doesn't love it late, she's almost assuredly going to be on the front end.
And I would also imagine the number 12, Ticker Tape Home, who is shown in second on the pace projector, could be another that is aggressively ridden in this race. She has an aggressive rider on her back, and she's done some of her best racing in sprints where she's been up close to the pace. So I think those two will probably be vying for early supremacy, but there are plenty of others that have tactical speed that might want to be forward in this race. So given the size of the field, I'm not going to be surprised if this race does heat up on the front end as that fast pace flag predicts on the pace projector. Let's move on to the Timeform US Finish Projector, one of the new features in the new version of Timeform US that's recently been launching on DRF mobile PPs and now this week on your desktop path performances on DRF.com. And Craig, this is based heavily on the pace projector and the prior speed figures of the horses, so not a big surprise to see that Finish Projector selecting the number 10 Free Look, who is coming out of the toughest races and has some nice speed figures. But I would also note the position of the number 12, Ticker Tape Home, who has some nice prior speed figures in her own right.
Yeah, she did nearly as good. We haven't seen either one of these horses in a little while on turf. Obviously, we haven't seen the morning line favorite since the Breeders' Cup back in November. The 12 Ticker Take Home we saw come back at Tampa, but on the dirt didn't go so well. But her prior turf races come from back in October, where she ran very well. So she's a tough call.
Let's go through the contenders in this race, and we're going to try to take as many as we can in post-position order, beginning with the number 1, Mission of Joy. And we'll take a look at her last race at Tampa Bay Downs, where she won an optional claiming event. Craig got a great trip this day, just basically stalking the pace the entire way and then pulling clear in the stretch. But having watched each of this filly's last 2 turf races, I just really like the way she finishes. She lowers her head like the good progeny of Kitten's Joy do and just runs through the wire with a lot of power. I know she hasn't faced this level of competition yet, but I get the sense she's actually pretty good.
Yes, I think she's very good. She's a horse who's not been particularly flattered by the final time speed figures, due mostly to slow paces, as you can see all of those blue fractions in her last couple PP lines. But when you look a little deeper, I think she was just a lot better than the horses she was facing. I'm with you. I like how she looked when she runs. And she's also not a horse, though she was on the front end. Normally, you tend to dismiss those slow pace front running wins when they draw away. We'd already seen that she can pass horses when she broke her maiden a couple starts back. And I just think she's a lot better than she looks. Those adjusted speed figures for the where she gets the pace boost fit in this field, but most of them. So I feel she's really dangerous from the rail position.
Yeah, I agree. If we showed the replay of her last race, I would say her race 2 back when she broke her maiden was even more impressive because she was outside the entire way, stalking, took some stutter steps out of the starting gate. Like she wasn't quite sure of the footing for the first quarter mile of the race, but she really figured things out by the end of that race and finished powerfully. So she seems like a contender in this race. We're going to skip over the number 2 All-American Beauty. I was a little surprised to see her listed as low as 8-1 on the morning line, but I know Craig and I weren't particularly interested in that horse. So we're going going to move on to the number 3, Alpha Bella, and we'll take a look at her last race when she was a good second in the Swedish Chant at a big price, going off at 16-1, and took a big step forward off her maiden victory, Craig, competing against her heavily bet stablemate Cairo Consort, who arguably did run the better race, but I still thought that Alpha Bella was game to secure the place.
Yeah, I thought she ran well. She did take a nice step forward. She's not one of the horses I particularly like in here because I think she still needs to take yet another step forward. I think Cairo Consort is a little bit overrated. We saw her get beat last time when third. She has run back since this race. So I don't want to totally dismiss Alpha Bella drawing inside, but I prefer some others in here.
I liked her maiden victory too back. I know that was a slow-paced race where she was in attendance to the pace, but I really liked the way she dug in to secure that victory. And then last time, Cairo Consort blew the start, so that's why I say that she was much the best in victory. But Alpha Bella was pressing a pace that did come apart that day and was the only one that was involved in the pace that was still running at the end. So I think she does deserve some credit for finishing second there, but obviously does have to get a little bit faster if she is going to get on terms with the morning line favorite in this race. We'll skip over another long shot and go to the number 5, Dreaming of Snow, the horse that was shown on the lead on the pace projector. And we'll check out her last race when she was the upset winner at 38-1 of the Suncoast Stakes. This is obviously on the dirt on the Sam F. Davis undercard. And Craig, she's beating a pretty good horse here in last year's Juvenile Fillies champion, Wonder Wheel, as well as Julia Shining, who was third. They took all the money in this race, but Dreaming of Snow never let them get by her in the stretch to pull off this upset.
No, she was game as could be. She ran a good speed figure, as we can see, that 100, which fits in this field. The big question with her is just turf. You're obviously much more of an expert on that than me, but as I look at it, I think it is a pretty big question mark.
She does have 2 siblings, and they did both win on the turf, but they did so going shorter. Her best sibling is a horse named Montauk Daddy, who, if you follow New York racing, you might be familiar with. He was a horse that could kind of go back and forth pretty easily between dirt and turf, but over sprint distances. And I'm just a little bit wary of her repeating that last race because it did feel like speed was holding that day at Tampa, and she might have been carried along a little bit by that, and then transferring that upset victory to the turf. Just a lot of variables in play for Dreaming of Snow, and I wouldn't want to take any kind of short price on her in this race. Let's move on to a couple of horses that are drawn next to each other in the gate that actually competed against each other in a January 7th stakes at Gulfstream. That's the Ginger Brew, and I'm talking about Navy Goat and Stephanie's Charm. And when we take a look at the replay of that race, both of these horses fall just short, Craig. I thought that Stephanie's Charm put in her usual good late run down the center of the course to just miss. You could see Navy Goat is kind of in between horses in a little bit of traffic, arguably never had a fully clear run, but she was a little one-paced at the end. So both of these horses are going to have to do a little bit better.
I would agree. I think this is a pretty big step up, even though it's only going from a listed stakes to a grade 3. I think they're facing much better company in here. Stephanie's Charm's already come back. She tried a grade 3 and didn't do a lot of running all at a big price, which he's probably going to be here too. But for me, I think there's others that are just better.
Yeah, Navy Goat, who we're looking at here, another horse that's just going to have to get a little bit faster. Her best speed figure is on the synthetic at Gulfstream Park. I am more interested in the number 7, Stephanie's Charm, coming out of that race. Like you said, Greg, she didn't run that well last time, but I also didn't think she got the best ride last time. She was just hung out wide the entire way, 4 to 5 wide around the far turn, and probably not the kind of trip that you want to get when you're making a closing run or attempting to make a closing run at Gulfstream Park. Her races 2 and 3 back, I thought she put in some nice finishes on each occasion, and I'm only highlighting her and talking about her in favorable terms just in the context of that pace projector, Craig, because there is quite a bit of pace signed on, and if things fall apart, maybe a long shot like this could be one that's charging at the end, and maybe not the most talented horse in this race, but I won't be surprised if she's able to outrun her odds.
Yeah, she'll definitely be coming if you look at the time. Oh. I was going to say, if you look at the late Timeform US late pace rating, she is one of the better in the field. So I would use her more underneath than anything else.
Move on to the number 8, Juniper's Moon, and we'll take a look at her maiden victory last time at Tampa Bay Downs. And Craig, this is one where I know you have this speed figure pretty fast, and this felt like a race when you handicapped it that might have had some quality in it. Quite a few first-time starters in here, so we think we have to get some confirmation about how good they are. But I thought that Juniper's Moon was pretty game to hold off multiple challenges after cutting out the fractions the entire way.
I liked what I saw that day. If memory serves, I think we both liked her when we did the forecast that day, and she ran back to it, paid a nice $11, and I think the speed figure's legit. We haven't had a lot of confirmation, but there were plenty of turf races at Tampa that day. It was easy speed figure to make, so I would take 20-1 on a morning line, 20-1 morning line on a horse like this every day of the week who has competitive speed figure that I think is totally legit.
Yeah, it's not like that came out of nowhere because she had also run well in her turf debut at Aqueduct, overcoming a slow start to make a good late run to be second that day. And she's got a big pedigree by Galileo out of I'm a Chatterbox, a grade 1 winner on the dirt. But clearly, this is a turf filly based on her performances on the racetrack. So I agree, 20-1 seems way too high on a horse like Juniper's Moon that has so much upside. We'll skip over another 20-1 shot that doesn't look quite as favorable to Craig and I and move on to that morning line favorite, the number 10 Free Look. And we'll check out her race 2 back in the Miss Grillo Stakes at Belmont at the Big A. And she falls just short this day to Pleasant Passage, who was an upset winner of this race. But a couple things. Pleasant Passage had everything go her way this day. She was able to get to the front end in a race that didn't have that much pace lined on. And also, Pleasant Passage came back to run really well in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf next time, and once again finished ahead of Free Look in that race.
Yeah, I thought Free Look ran very well that day. She was able to hold right with Pleasant Passage through the stretch. I totally excuse her Breeders' Cup Juvenile Philly turf race because it just wasn't a great trip. She was kind of bottled up inside. She ran an okay speed figure. I will say that I don't give those as much credit as I do races where they're competitive. I wonder if being inside she didn't get sucked along a little bit, but just putting a line through that one and moving to the Miss Grillo, I mean, that makes her competitive here. She has the best connection. She definitely has the best rider. The one concern is he's going to have to work out a trip from the 10 post. The plenty of early speed in here should make that a little bit easier, but it's just something you have to wonder and decide how short of a price do you want to take.
Yeah, and I think value really is the difficult question to answer with Free Look because it's such a competitive field. Sometimes bettors default to horses like this that look like they have a class edge for a powerful trainer like Chad Brown with Irad Ortiz up. To me, it just feels like she is guaranteed to be an underlay in this race. And yeah, she's coming out of some tough races, but I'm not sure how good that Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf really was, at least as far as the American runners in there go, compared to some others in here. The winner of that race, Meditate, was a European shipper who basically embarrassed her US-based competition. So I don't know how much credit I do want to give Free Look for just participating in that race. I think that this could be a tough spot for her off the layoff, but we'll see how they bet it. The horse to her outside is the number 11, Grace Darling, and we'll check out her last race at Gulfstream Park. And this was a pretty impressive maiden victory, first time in this country. She got a great trip and a fantastic ride from Tyler Gaffalione, saving ground the entire way, and you could see splitting horses in the stretch there. But this filly took him there. She showed a nice burst of speed to run away from this field late.
I think it was visually impressive. Speed figure wise, not so much. We can see that she only got an 88 speed figure. She'd need to take another big jump up. And for me, when she comes off what was pretty much a perfect trip, it's hard for me to see that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I prefer some others in here, seeing that she'd probably have to improve another 15 points from a tough outside post position.
I agree. And you do want to note the runner-up in that race also came from the back of the pack to get up for second. So it was a race in general that fell apart a little bit. So maybe the visual impression is a little bit overblown if you're going to be taking a shorter price than some others based on that, ignoring the speed figure. Let's move on to one more horse, the horse drawn all the way on the outside in the main body of the field, the number 12 Ticker Tape Home, a horse that we've talked about already a little bit with regard to the pace projector and the finish projector, because she does have the tactical speed to be forward. And I would imagine from this outside draw, they're going to want to try to get over and save some sort of ground. And she ran some pretty nice speed figures, Craig, last year, but those were 1 turn 7 furlong races. So still has some things to prove going a longer distance.
Yeah, speed figure wise, she looked really good, particularly that 111 back, where I don't think that was much of a fluke. She ran away. You don't know if you often see horses win turf races by almost 10 lengths, particularly at only 7 furlongs. It was a firm turf course. It had a little give in it, but it wasn't one of those bogs. She ran fine on the synthetic next out at 7 furlongs. I think you can safely put a line through that dirt race where she just didn't seem to handle it at all. And for me, the two questions are distance and the post position. The one time she tried a longer distance at Saratoga, she packed it in pretty early, was immediately cut back to sprint. So for me, it's a couple of question marks, but she is going to be a price.
Let's proceed on to our picks for this Florida Oaks. And Craig, both you and I are going against the favorite. I actually left her out of my top 4 completely, just kind of making a statement here that I don't think she's going to be sufficient value, at least in my estimation. So I left out the number 10 Free Look. You're also somewhat against her. And we each put horses that are double digits on the morning line on top of our picks.
Yeah, and we have them both in our top 4. I was really torn on the 1 Mission of Joy and the 8 Juniper's Moon. I just went with the 8 Juniper's Moon because for me, it's hard to pass up that huge 20-1. But it's definitely a race where I think it's worth taking a swing because the favorite is, as you said, almost assuredly going to be a pretty big underlay in here.
Yeah, I think both of the horses that Craig and I have on top definitely have upside coming into this race. And Craig made the case for Juniper's Moon. I made the case for the number 1 Mission of Joy, who I just really think has a lot of talent. And we'll see if she can show it against this tougher field in the Grade 3 Florida Oaks on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.